Andre, give us an intro. We need an intro. You know, one of those formal intros.
Daddy.
No, not one of those. Like, you got to give us like a, welcome.
Oh, it's like, hey, everybody, welcome to the Two-Age Sojourner. My name is Andre Beck. This is Michael Beck, and we'll be taking you through the Pilgrim Theology today.
Boom. Stay tuned. Something like that, yeah. Something upbeat, something that gets us started.
We do need to do more of that.
We do. Because it's getting hang loose Mother Goose over here. You know, we are just...
Now, what we need to be doing is we need to have like a little one-line script that we say just every time. Like almost just by rote. Like, it doesn't matter how boring it gets. Just
I agree.
Hi, I'm Andre. I'm pastor of Bethesda Baptist Church in Felixstowe. That's Mike. He's pastor of Gracenet Church in Wellington.
Yakety smackety. And it all serves as a good vocal warm-up, you know.
Yeah. Click like and share down there. And,
all of that. We got to just give in to the mainstream. That's what we got to do.
We don't do this often enough to be able to reinforce those habits. That's the problem.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, and here's the crazy thing.
What?
Podcasters have known that we should have been doing this all along. They know this already. They've tested these waters.
They've all been doing it.
It.
Oh, how we scoffed at their...
We just thought it was pathetic.
Repetitive nature and their pleas for clicks and likes.
I mean, crazy. Anyway, so yeah, like I'm meeting people that have like, you know, just they're getting onto, they followed us for quite some time, and then they realize, oh, you're in Wellington. I thought you were in the States. Or I was, you know,
that's just your accent throws them. Though.
What's that?
That's just your accent throws them.
Well, I suppose, but we don't mention like where we're from enough either. So, anyway, so all to say,
we're from South Africa.
we're not. No, we're from South Africa, I suppose. Yeah, originally, but yeah. So, anyways, and even the fact that we're not in the same like city, you know, is potentially mesmerizing. You know?
So, all the same time zone.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, yeah. So you're in the UK. I'm in Wellington for anyone who cares, and we'll get pro. Just give us some time. You know, we're just trying to make a freaking podcast thing over here. Just give us some time. All right. So I mean, this is actually us trying to be diligent. You know, we're moving through a body of doctrine, and we're trying to be systematic. We care about people. We're trying to keep the last, I don't know, 6-7 podcasts have been like trying to actually bring people into the conversation rather than just, you know, just being like this weird sort of clique elitist thing that we had been doing up until that point. So this is just a way to kind of, you know, just open the conversation up a little bit. We care a lot about Kleinian theology and good, solid Reformed theology, and we're Baptists, so that's a bit of a spin on that. And we like Horton, we like you know, those kinds of two-age Sojourner kind of theologians, and so we figured, all right, well let's pick a text like Horton's where he covers all the basic doctrines. Let's roll through them one at a time, and just kind of, you know, just talk it through and put some basic definitions on the table. And when this is all done, I'll put it all in a playlist. Anyone wants to refer to that, they can just go back. And hopefully we would have hit these definitions at some level. And if there are any parts that, you know, serve anyone well, what we can do is just clip that out and keep that a little soundbite. And so all that kind of stuff is, we'll get that done in the next 50 years. So stay tuned, and you know, or we might not, and we might let you down. So I don't know. We'll just watch this space. Yeah. But we're having fun doing it, and this is good stuff. So we're talking about if you happen to have, don't go and buy it or anything, but we'll actually do buy it, you know, not to listen to us or anything, but listen to Horton. He wrote a great systematic. So buy the Christian Faith or his slightly more abridged version. It's not an abridged version. I should stop saying that. It's kind of his rewrite. That's supposed to be more accessible. It ends up being very different in many ways. But the Pilgrim, what's called Pilgrim Theology. That's right.
That's the one.
And so go get that, read it through, you know, follow us. We're not going to like overview the book though, so just don't get too excited about that. And you read the book and you're expecting us to like touch on each thing. That's not going to happen either. But there are just some good little points that he hits on the way through that is helpful to us as we just talk it through. So in this particular instance, he's entitled Chapter 6. We're in Chapter 6. He's entitled it The Fall. And my goodness, this is no normal hamartiology. You know,
No.
this was no normal. This is like nothing I've ever seen in terms of a chapter entitled "The Fall." It's probably the best thing I've ever read on anything with entitled "The Fall." You know, usually this is in the little anthropology section under hamartiology, and then you just kind of move on from there. But I mean, it's masterful. I don't know how he did it exactly. I mean, I kept reading it through, going, brilliant. "Oh my goodness, we got it all in here." He literally put it all.
Well, he does have it all, because you do get all the standard stuff, you know, on the nature of sin and temptation, but you do also get much more.
You get much more. Well, you know what? I appreciated just hearing it all together, because, you know, only after years, you know, of studying theology and kind of going through this, did I eventually start seeing how these all connect and click, and how they're absolutely essential to understand, you know, the fall.
Yeah,
and
it's funny because like it was such a light bulb moment to realize all this stuff. Do you think this is just what they get taught like on year one at Westminster?
Oh, I know that totally they do.
That's irritating, isn't it?
That's why you got to go to Westminster.
We have to plow through to get to this point.
Yeah, anyway. Us mere mortals have to, you know, work hard to freaking just make day one. But you know, I do think of that time. Oh my goodness, it's such an embarrassing story. I remember being in the car with Jim Renian, and he's, you know, there he is at Westminster Seminary, you know, with these, you know, his office is next to David Van Drunen's office, and, you know, he's just kind of, that's where he has been dwelling for the last however many years, and it's like my second year of preaching, you know.
Okay.
So I spent about like at least, it must have been like half an hour telling him how awesome my preaching was, you know, just saying, well, like, wait, you gotta hear my sermons, Jim. You just got to hear them. They are next level. I look back on those sermons now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like this stuff was not in there, right? It was just not even, it was, and this is like,
had not yet discovered this stuff.
And I remember how gracious he was with me. He just laughed at me, you know, did it sort of meanly.
Yeah, that sounds gracious.
It was sort of mean, but it was kind of like just shut up.
Yeah,
and it just kind of, you know, and but yeah, now I just think about it.
He didn't call you a pathetic worm, or
like, why did he not kick me out of the car while I was driving? Well, probably because he didn't want to die, but you know what I mean. Like, that's kind of the reaction that I should have got. Anyway, so it's just they teach good stuff at Westminster Seminary. I wish it wasn't like the only seminary that did such a good job at that level.
Well, I think you should start one, Mike.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah, but you know, this is the thing. We just read the books. You know, read the books. Thankfully, they're all prolific. All those lecturers are prolific authors, and they put their stuff out, and just anyone who cares can go read them. And thankfully, they've got good, solid content coming out in a few different ways now. So it's not just what it used to be, where, you know, you just had to get the info via, you know, going to the seminary and that sort of thing. And now they've got all these online things going on as well. So at least it makes it a little bit more accessible. I mean, it's not the only thing in the world. You can go back a notch as well. I think the way to actually get at this is you can jump back and you know, get into Gerhardus Voss, and, you know, even back from that, Bavinck and all those guys, and sort of take the lead up. But it just takes longer, you know, and then until these things start dawning on you. And then it's just, you have it in such an accessible format, so refined. At Westminster Seminary in California. So there we go. There's a free plug.
We're not sponsored by them, by the way.
No, we are not, because we're pesky Baptists. They don't care about us.
We'd like to be. If anyone from Westminster is open to that, we're open to it.
That's true. We might even go Presbyterian.
Yeah, I'm not saying I would, but I'm just saying it's not off the table.
It's not off the table.
You know?
Depends how much money we get. All right, cool. So let's try and hit some of this. He opens it up with the covenant of creation, right? Which is just a fantastic. You can't really think. You don't even know what happened at the fall. We know that there was a transgression, right?
Yeah.
We know that there was a transgression, a sin, a missing of the mark, and you get all these random abstract ways of describing sin. But how can you know what sin is until you know what was transgressed? You know, and what was. There's this whole thing that was in place that was sinned against. I mean, and of course we can get that by reading the Bible story and just seeing how, you know, man obviously was ignoring the word of God, and there was just this thing that happened. But it's so much richer when you realize, oh wow, there was this whole thing that man turned away. Yeah. I mean, I was just finished reading Bill, you know, his thing on the temple, and he just really plays on the idea of the temple motif in the garden, which of course Klein does as well and Horton does as well. But just again bringing out that whole idea that really what Adam was doing was turning away from his temple building project, and that's part of the covenant of creation. He was to build a temple. What is a temple? It's not a building. It's a meeting place with God and man that extends throughout all of creation, And
that's a great book.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, he's got that scholarly one, and then he's got the biblical theology of the New Testament, and then he's got the accessible, I forget what it's called now, something like God Dwells Among Us or something, the abridged version, but all of them are good. So, and he just hits this one topic.
Temple in the Church's Mission?
Yeah, that's the more academic one. Yeah, good. Yeah. So if anyone's wanting to get into it, though, I'd recommend first getting that little baby one. Yeah.
Okay, so there's this covenant in creation.
Yeah.
And that's the setting for what actually goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that's the part that we often miss. And we miss it because we don't see the word covenant in the creation narratives. But we know the covenant is there. Apart from anything else, we know the covenant's there because Hosea 6:7 tells us it's there. Right?
Well, a lot of people debate whether that is talking about that, and it's just not the most winsome passage to anyone who's. I think it is
a strong hint.
Oh yeah, and I think there's good scholarship has been done on it, and I think it can. I believe it's talking about that. But one of the things it says, like Adam, they have transgressed the covenant. Talking to Israel, and identifying there was a covenant as it was with Israel, so it was with Adam. It's an important text for republication as well, but we'll leave that out for now. Although he's got republication in here, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, got it all in here. But anyway, so it could be just like man, they've broken the covenant. I'm fine with that because the implication is that everyone has broken a covenant with God, which means it must find its source
some kind of covenant.
Yeah. So that's cool. So one way or another, it does definitely lead to that idea. You've got also all the fixtures, the sanctions, life, death. You've got a few instances. I think the main thing for me is just that, you got Paul comparing Adam and Christ. And so as the covenantal arrangement that we call the eternal covenant or covenant of redemption was in play, as a sort of covenant of works. So it was with the first Adam, otherwise the whole parallel falls apart. So you can read it back in from there as well. And there are a few things to say to kind of argue the case, but I don't know. The idea of needing to find the word covenant there is a little bit lame,
Yeah.
You don't look for the word, you look for the concept, yeah. And so, it's almost like trying to find Trinity in the Bible or something. We've covered that ground. Yeah.
I guess. You just have to read the Gospels to know that that's just not how it works. Like the Bible doesn't always say things explicitly. Like it's the classic case of, where does Jesus say that he's God? Well, you can find one or two proof texts where Jesus does do that, but the vast majority of the time he's screaming it out.
Yeah. But
he's alluding to it, through what he's doing, through what he's saying, through the way that he's using the Old Testament, the way he's fulfilling prophecy. His whole life is a testimony to his claim to divinity. But it only becomes explicit in one or two places. So, if you're going to be a Christian and only look for the explicit mention of a word, explicit mention of a concept. You're gonna, it's just not the way. It's just not the way we read the Bible. We recognize the Bible communicates in subtleties.
Yep, totally. So there is this reality of this covenant with creation from the time that man is created in the image of God, and that's the whole thing as well. Here's another interesting way to think about the covenant of creation.
Okay,
I don't hear people talk about this, and maybe it's not the most direct thing, but man is made in the image of God. Okay, so he's imaging God. This is the whole concept of God's working to enter into rest. He's entering into glory and entering into that final place that he calls man to. And he calls man to image him. So man then works to enter into that same rest, right? And so here's the basis for the covenant of works, the covenant of creation, what he had to do to enter into rest. And then, man is the woman is made from man, right, in the image of man, all right, and then there's a covenant that they enter into in marriage. So you got the covenant of man and woman, imaging the covenant with God and man, and that covenant is working to bring about the rest is the dominion mandate and so forth, where they are going to populate the world with the glory of God in the image of man, and this is a man and woman task, and it's just like quite an interesting path back to through that imaging process back to what God has done. Yeah,
I'm just thinking that does connect quite well with what we spoke about in the previous chapter on what it actually means to be an image bearer. Yeah, which is that the image is actually to do with the relationship, the covenant between.
Yeah, us. I know.
So the whole idea of being an image bearer is connected to God through that kind of idea of covenant. So then you get, so then you see a kind of parallel. That's interesting.
Interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, look, it's not the thing I would lean on, but it's just kind of there anyway, it's good. And
because there is a kind of the image going through, or representing what God is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, as it's the same thing with, and Klein goes on about this, and this is probably getting a little bit too deep for just kind of intro stuff, but basically, you've got this idea of God there in His luminescent glory, in so doing, in being there in the glory spirit, he's foreshadowing or offering a down payment of the very glory that will be imaged by man as he gets, as he passes this probationary period. Does what he is called to do, crushes the serpent, stands for God in righteousness, and this expels from the temple this thing that's profane, and in so doing, then begins this dominion mandate, and so builds the temple, expands over all of creation, and enters into glory, and when you say it like that, you realize, okay, wait a minute, that is doing exactly what Christ does, That's so whatever it puts the fall into a sort of this major two Adam perspective, in that now you see that everything Jesus did is what Adam failed to do, which is what sin is, and you get that whole idea coming through loud and clear via covenant as well. It only makes sense. Jesus' ministry only makes sense in light of the Mosaic covenant and what was presented there in terms of him doing what they failed to do. And there's another way to read it back in, because if Israel is replicating Adam, it's a republished covenant there, which I think there's plenty of evidence to prove. Then you're seeing again, like the whole thing that's why Hosea said, like Adam, they've transgressed the covenant. And then that's what Jesus does, is he's the guy who's not going to transgress the covenant. And you see it all from that positive perspective. So yeah, all those sorts of angles you could take, but it takes you down the road, and we get past but I think the big thing is to just go this. It's not just Klein, it's not Reformed theology, as Horton points out. You've got this continuity with Irenaeus, the Cappadocians. This is just that two Adam idea where have a probation. Adam fails, Jesus passes it. What was on offer was the kingdom, eschatological glory, consummation, Sabbath rest. Adam didn't attain that, and Jesus does, and that's why we're going to heaven. That's the whole deal.
One time.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, you're saying that let's say I spoke to somebody who's never heard of any of this before. Okay, like never heard of the covenant of creation, never heard of republication, never heard of even the two Adams, right? And they're looking at Genesis with you, and they're thinking, maybe I can just about see the idea of covenant here, but I don't understand where the idea of probation comes from. Are you saying that basically the best way to answer that, the best way to say, if you want to see where the idea of, because it comes up quite early on, just to give everyone some context, Horton says, if Adam had been faithful in his covenant trial, he would have entered the Sabbath consummation then and there, leading us and the whole creation in his train.
Yeah, and I think slight nuance there. I mean, like, as in, you don't want to get too speculative in terms of, exactly how it would have played out and, be bound by these rules. But, Klein, for example, talks about the covenant of conferment first, and, the whole idea that, really, if you think about the parallel with Christ, right? Christ has successfully accomplished the probationary period, right? So it's not like Christ is on probation at the moment. And yet the dominion mandate, so to speak, now we're thinking of the Great Commission, not the actual, having children thing, but filling the earth with the glory of not the image of the man of dust, but the image of the man of heaven, not via procreation, but proclamation of the gospel, not by a physical birth, but by a new birth. This is the true reality of the dominion mandate now being accomplished by Christ. He is building
the dominion mandate is being accomplished through the Great Commission.
Absolutely. It's true fulfillment anyway. I mean, I think you do have the refracted form of the dominion mandate in the Noahic covenant as well, but that's like it's taken on a changed form. It's for the purposes of preservation rather than.
So the covenant with Noah kind of continues.
It does continue. It does continue. Like if you talk about the different, you just have to qualify everything you talk about because of the reality of the fall, So basically everything that happened with Adam continues on through Noah in a preserved sense. It doesn't have, as Klein puts it, a Sabbath promise attached to it. It's not that your cultural labors or your baby having is going to get heaven like Adam would have as a result, entered into glory. That's not it's the covenant works is not an option for us in that sense. But it has the benefit, the ameliorative effect of preservation and providing a humanity from which the Savior could come, and now preserving a humanity in which mission can take place and temple building in the gospel mission can take place. But when we talk about the thing that Adam should have done under the covenant of works, right? There we're thinking about the direct parallel to the covenant of works is the covenant that Christ is under, which is not the Noahic covenant, of course, or not the covenant of grace even, but the covenant of redemption. God the Father gave to Christ the work that he needed to do, and if he was successful, he would then enter into rest. And he would bring the train with, obviously, we would follow in his train, so to speak. And so, there's the works-based covenants, parallel one another. And that's why I say, at that parallel level, that direct sense of continuity, the thing that Adam failed to do through his childbearing is now achieved through Christ and the Great Commission. How are children born into the kingdom? It's obviously not via procreation, but it's through the bride helper still, Christ and his bride helper, the church. So again, you got the total parallels. What's that?
Good hyphenating, good Kleinian hyphenating.
Thanks. I try, but there it is. The bride helper is still there, and so in that sense, it fulfills it completely. And so, I think just with the whole thing though, when you're talking about Horton's idea here, I'd have to read it over again and see what he actually said. But like, so the idea would be that Adam is off of probation immediately after he would, let's say, he would have repelled the serpent and didn't fail. It's not that he would have gone into this eschatological state at that point, rather he would have begun the work of the Great Commission, reading it back in. He would have begun the work of temple building, of filling the earth of procreation, filling the earth with the glory of the image of man, God in man. And then once, as Klein puts it, once you have this megapolis, this city, this great city in place, then the flash of epiphanic light.
Epiphanic.
You gotta love that.
Supersonic.
Well, basically, what he's talking about there is the second coming, the parousia.
Yeah,
a moment where God does it. It's not like our labors would ever have brought about heaven, but at the moment when the dominion mandate is completely fulfilled, then God transforms megapolis into metapolis. Those are your kids.
Yeah, man, those are my kids. It's holidays. Talk
about dominion mandate.
Yeah,
You got little babies everywhere.
I'm doing it.
You got the wrong mandate going.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true. But
I mean,
if you suck at one, you must also focus on the other.
We have you to thank for the preservation of the world. We have a humanity in which to work.
I only have 4 kids, guys. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I fell short of the Christian standard, which was 5 for a long time.
True. Well, yeah. And a lot of it is because people
after all that talk about overpopulation, everyone's now like, hey, we need to start having babies again.
Yeah.
Because our population's dying.
Well, there we go. Noahic covenant, that's the thing. It's like
you still got time, Mike. You still got time.
Yeah, lots of time.
You get time.
In glory.
You can have more. Okay. So,
right.
So there's this covenant in creation. And this covenant creation is a kind of probationary thing that Adam fails, which is what Christ comes to do. And that provides the context of what we call the fall. It wasn't so much just a slip up. It was a breaking of a covenant.
It was a transgression. Absolutely. It was a abandonment of the temple building project. It was a turning away from the point of the temple itself, which is, to do the will of God. I think the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is important there as well. A man assuming to himself the role of the suzerain rather than the vassal. It's all of that. The thing that only God was supposed to do, he tried to usurp God. Really, I think that's the best way to talk about it. It was an idolatry. He tried to usurp God's throne. That's what he tried to do.
Yeah, it was
to be like God.
It was an attempted coup.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's interesting as well that to view from this perspective not only gives us perspective about the fall, but I mean, Horton made a couple of great little I don't know what you call them, sort of apologetic points or just worldview points. Just
right, sensus divinitatis and all that. It's all in there.
Yeah, why do we act the way we do?
Yeah.
Why
are we even goal-oriented?
Yeah, exactly.
Not
the
orientated.
Whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
I think either one. So one of the things he says here, it is this original covenant that explains why all human beings retain, even after the fall, some sense of God and their relation to him as judge, along with a lively sense of obligation to their neighbors.
Yeah, because it's the law. It's the law. It's the Mosaic covenant, that's giving us insight into what that original covenant consisted of. There is, even just the fact that we have some sense of morality. Are you talking to me or are you talking to your kids? What's going on over there?
Yeah, I just shouted at them. Someone be quiet.
Okay, that's good. Tell them Uncle Mike says be quiet as well.
Okay. Uncle Mike says be quiet too.
Trying to do a podcast over here.
I mean, amateur hour.
Not from my side.
Just can't get there.
It's pro on my side, bro.
Well.
So, all right, listen. Basically, that's such a good point because it counts for every single religion in the world. Yeah. It counts for all morality. It counts for common grace. I mean, the stuff that you're thinking about, even the reason that we want to do stuff. We want to go to outer space and it accounts for the futility of the curse and how we all feel frustrated and how death makes everything stupid, because now we're just basically wasting time and, it's totally. Like, and nothing we can't, even if we find a way to get to Pluto, we can never enjoy it because we'll die, and it's just
on the way there.
And I always feel for the poor astronauts and stuff. I mean, those guys feel it, right? Because there they are looking at this like sky the whole time, and just seeing the expansiveness of it and, thinking about things they'll never in a million, they're just feeling the leash of their own lifetime, in profound ways. But, of course, it happens scholarly endeavors and, anyone who tries anything serious will never actually succeed because death, and as the author of Ecclesiastes says, it's just ultimately who cares because I have to give it to someone else anyway.
Yeah, what's
it
got to do with me?
Yeah, so why even try? It's all vanity. And
but we still do try because we're built that way.
Totally, yeah, exactly. And even, try and, what you were saying earlier there, just with the usurping thing, we still try and create our own covenant of works. This is the whole Babel thing. We build our own tower. We want our own Garden of Eden. We want our own way to get there, to be God. We're still trying to do it. That whole thing is the Antichrist spirit right there that we're always moving towards.
That's what atheism is.
That's what atheism is, for sure. Exactly. A rejection of the Creator. Yeah,
I laughed because did you hear about that article of the new satanic church that's just started in South Africa?
But like lame Satanism or real Satanism?
Well, the way they described it was, I mean, it's not like like sacrifice cats like it used to be.
No, well, I'm thinking like real Satanism, like they're aware that it's the law of the Lama and all that. Basically there is no real Satan. We're all just trying to do what we want and usurp our thrones, and so they literally are on point. Yeah,
but that's it. Yeah, I laughed because it was so funny. They're like, "Oh, we don't believe in any of that actual devil stuff.
It's just atheist.
We just want to be the gods of our own lives." And I'm like, wow.
I know, and Satan is the
pretty
symbol.
Much like the original dude.
Exactly, and they even got Satan as the symbol for like the very thing. It's almost like they've created their whole deal from the Bible. It's so
if
classic.
not done to Satan. I mean, you can't help but see that. I mean, the poor dudes, they're just trapped in it. My goodness.
But they're like totally honest though, which is so good.
Yeah, one time.
Cool.
I mean, I could. It's just crazy,
man.
But yeah, so you get all that, man. It just makes. This is what I love about this stuff because it just makes sense of stuff.
Oh yeah.
I love it when it just makes sense of stuff.
Totally.
Because it's like that feeling of frustration and why do I want to do stuff and yet think it's pointless at the same time and always fail at the stuff that I'm trying to do, No, it's good.
It just gives such, to the end of Ecclesiastes, where this is the end of man. Fear God and obey His commandments. Wow. So in other words, go back to the covenant of works. Really, just think about that, and then it sort of catapults you into the problem. You're back in Adam. Then, yeah, you are. Oh, I can't actually do the commandments. Now what? Now the only hope is the hope that the Bible gives you, and that is that one can do it for you. One would come, the seed of the woman, who would do it for you, and the one who gives you life beyond the sun, so to speak. Not,
You see that a lot, actually. If you think about Proverbs as well, it does a similar thing in the way it ends, doesn't it? Because it ends with that picture of, the woman, the perfect
Yes.
woman who can find. And so there's this kind of like, oh, all you have to do to live this perfect life is, and you're like, but who can do that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All you need is this perfect woman.
And people, and this is the great thing because, when people talk about sin, they're like, well, what is that exactly? Well, it's just do the stuff that you feel is a good thing. I often talk to and this is the covenant of works we're talking about, the moral law written on the heart. The other day I was talking to someone and they were like debating the existence of God and morality. I'm like, okay, well, all right, just forget it all. I'm having coffee with the guy. Like, just you tell me what you think is a good thing to do. And just let's try and lay it out, and Horton mentions here you got Confucius and you got all these the Code of Hammurabi and all these things that have like very close to the Ten Commandments. But it's so funny when you ask people that question because and I would have been the same, because you know what you're not going to tell. If you've got a little kid, you don't want your kid to go out and kill people and rape and murder and everything. You know what you'd want them to do with their lives and be kind, be helpful, that sort of thing, just general ways. So if you ask someone, hey, you give me what you think is a good thing to do, and just that will bring you to the good place after you die. It's the yin, it's the yang, who knows, if it's reincarnation, whatever, just what gets you to the good place, what gets you even feeling that you have lived a good life, even if you just leave out the question of theism for a moment. And typically they put on the table this like decalogue, and then you go, okay, we'll just do that.
Yeah.
And then,
and
like,
you'll be golden.
You'll be golden. Just go out and do that. And then, it's like Jesus' approach to evangelism. Just go, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Oh, the covenant of works. Just
you
go.
Tell me. Yeah, exactly.
Just go do that. Yeah.
Joe, that reminds me. The other thing that's made total sense about was, Romans 2. when it talks about Jew and Gentile alike under the law.
Yeah.
And you're thinking,
It doesn't make sense otherwise.
but how does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it makes sense if, our being made in the image of God is being made,
Right.
as under the law of creation, that natural
It's
law.
such a big point because, and beyond that, it's like, who cares if Jesus obeyed the Mosaic law to save Jews? How is that a solution for Gentiles, right? You just think Jesus came as one born under the law. We all know this from the New Testament. Jesus is keeping the law. He does it for those under the Mosaic law. And you are as a Gentile, and you're thinking like, okay, that's good for Jews. Now the Jewish people under the Mosaic law have a substitute. But how does that help? And this is how it helps. If the Mosaic law is just a republication of this covenant in the beginning, that not just the Israelites, but all men have failed under. All of a sudden, when you realize Jesus, by keeping the Mosaic law, showed us he was keeping the thing that the Mosaic law actually simply republished. Then you realize, oh my goodness, that's why it matters that he kept the Mosaic law, not just for Jews, but for Gentiles. And that's why it's not just that they are, as you say, you're approaching it from from our condemnation side, as in, why are we condemned by this law? Well, that's why, because there's an overlap there in terms of the moral law. But in terms of the salvation, it's the same question. And why is Jesus' law keeping important for us? Same thing.
Yeah, and you get the same thing as well in Galatians. Is it Galatians 4, something around there, where he talks about, to the Galatians, he says, don't go back to the law of works, basically. Don't go back to natural religion.
Right.
So he's equating at that point the law of Moses with
first principles and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, the elementary principles of the world. He's equating the law of Moses with pagan religions.
Totally.
In the sense that, not that they're equal in terms of, one was from God and the other wasn't, but but in terms of the principle of works.
And the moral law,
even and the moral law,
So the internal witness, the not only the sense of the divine, but the knowledge of what is wrong and right, the conscience, essentially. And even the goal orientation. It's just amazing. It explains everything. So, and he does a great job. So if anyone wants a more systematic sort of overview of that, Horton really does a good job. I would say this is like my favorite chapter in the whole book. I might change my mind as we go through it, but I think this is pretty darn profound, the way he weaves it all together. And it's just that it's a lot of material that he covers and brings into one chapter and glues it together in a way that actually brings the traditional doctrine of original sin, just deepens it out and puts it into the kind of fruit. Oh my goodness, I think I just saw a kid in the back of your screen there. Dude, this is carnage. Can you just let people know what your email address is? Do it, please. Let them know. Let them know so that I don't have to get the hate mail and all the anger mail for you being such a I don't know, like an amateur guy.
Yeah.
All right, one more thing.
I'm happy for you to field it. Yeah.
I don't want to field it, bro. I want to get the good mail.
You have to.
You get the bad mail. All right, so stay of execution is the one I just want to finish off with here, which is really the movement there into common grace, and really setting the playing field for what we'll talk about as we move into the gospel. Right, the stay of execution is important, I think, because basically you realize when Adam fails on this, it should have been the end of the world. And the execution is what is in view there at Genesis 3, where the Lord comes and approaches in the garden and the Kol Adonai and the voice of the Lord and, all of those things. He wasn't just walking in the cool of the day. There was a stirring of the Ruach and a presentation of the final reality. Everything we think about at the end of the world was happening there in the Garden of Eden. And that should have been it. That's why they were hiding. That they were unable to screen themselves from the righteous fury of God. They had no covering. They had no covenantal mediatorship. Just nothing. And yet God stays the execution, which puts everything into context. It puts like our life right now into context. It puts the question of, well, why does bad things happen to good people? in context. It's because we're at this, like, God has stayed the execution, but he's put a curse on creation to remind us of this thing that's going to happen. He is mercifully,
Judgment Day is coming.
He's mercifully sustained us and allowed us time, and there is grace in that because we don't deserve it. But at the end of the day, the curse is there to keep it before us. Death is constantly before us. The execution is before us, and then that gives every highlight imaginable to Genesis 3:15, which is the only hope. Which obviously rolls out into the whole promise of Christ and the whole thing expanded through the story of the Old Testament. So very important.
One son. Yeah, really sets up, in a sense, not only the understanding of the problem, but the understanding of what life is the kind of explanation of our experience now, but also what we need, pointing forward. Like, how do we fix it? Understanding that it's a covenant problem, means that we're starting to, like you say, point towards something that we really, it points toward the work of Christ and what it needs to be in order to repair what went wrong.
Yeah, so Christology is in view already, and not to mention the gospel and redemption and justification. It's just everything. It is like the most important thing. Let me recommend, while we're talking, just if anyone does want to look at Klein as well, usually they get totally freaked out by, he is a difficult guy to read. But there's this one article that he wrote that really wasn't that difficult, and it's quite short. And if you just Google, because I ain't putting it on the show notes. I don't do that. So just Google, because you've got fingers, right? And you're on your computer now anyway, so just Google it, or on your phone or whatever. But Covenant Theology Under Attack, Meredith Klein. Just do that, and it'll pop up first hit, and then go read that. Just to take you like not that long, and it's so good. It's everything almost that we've been saying right now, just from a slightly more focused on these issues of justification, etc. So, have a look at that. And Lee Irons did a great talk with us a while back, or just worked with us on this topic. So you should see that in the archives. Just go and have a look at that if you want some more expansion on these ideas.
All
right. Well, this is good. I think we'll put this in. We'll put this in the playlist eventually. It's just unfortunate that we've got so many distractions, and Andrew was so amateur the entire time. Now they're going to see it again and again and again. Now, like, our really good one is always going to be like marred with all of this stuff. Your chair was creaking, like rubbing your nose.
My chair always creaks.
Kids are running all over the place. It's just like, dude, I'm trying to do a podcast over here. Help a brother out.
Yeah, well, look, Mike, if you want to send me the cash to build my studio out in the back, I'll do it, man.
Bro, that's loser talk right there. that's what people without studios would say about studios.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the frustration of the fall talking.
Totally. All right, cool.
Oh yeah.
Let's drop it at that.